Train the muscles, not the joints.
Welcome back to Natural Gallant Bodybuilding, and today I'm going to talk to you a bit about mountain. You just go back to mountain. If you can't remember what you're going to say, you just go mountain, and that usually takes care of everything. That's what I found. That's what I do. Try it yourself. Just talk to your wife, your girlfriend, or your boss at work, whatever, and just if you mix up your words or something, just say mountain. If you can't think of an argument to something, just say mountain. Totally dispels the whole logic of the argument right then and there. That's a free tip right there. Feel free to use it. Today I thought I'd talk to you a little bit about weak points in natural bodybuilders and what I noticed when I was competing. There are a few glaring weak points that most natural bodybuilders had as a general rule. Not all natural bodybuilders had this, but the guys who are winning competitions usually didn't have these weak points. So let's put it that way, right? The guys that were placing third, fourth, fifth, you know, that sort of thing, a lot of times they had some glaring weak points, although they had unbelievably great development, maybe in their arms or maybe their chest or whatever. There were a couple spots that a lot of natural guys were missing. The first spot I noticed was legs. As a whole, a lot of times their leg development was underdeveloped. A lot of times they would have really good medialuses, like the vastus medialis by the knee would be developed quite well because, you know, it usually shows that they're knee squatting or doing a lot of leg extensions. They're doing a lot of maybe front squats and that sort of thing, but they weren't necessarily getting that sweep developed in the quadricep. What happens when I do another dance video is I shed about, 100 or so subscribers because they're disgusted with it. They just want purely working out, just advice. And then I gain other people that understand where I'm coming from and they just have a good time with it because they know I just like being an idiot. So I like the people that understand that being an idiot's okay. So their leg development was small, because the medialis can only make up for so much of the leg, but a big part of the quadricep is the vastus intermedius and lateralis, as well as the rectus femoris. That's what creates that big sweepy type feel, right? So then you get that, big and balloony kind of, look, right? Balloony legs. So the main thing though, I noticed with a lot of natural guys was that their hamstrings were glaringly weak. So as much as their quads were not necessarily up to par, a lot of times the hamstrings, as a general rule, for a lot of guys, not all of them, a lot more people than you would think that are stepping on stage, their hamstrings were actually their weak point. And some of them were deadlifting, some of them were doing powerlifting deadlifts, some of them were doing a lot of hamstring curls, but they were not necessarily getting the hamstring development from how they were training with their squats and how they were training with their deadlifts. So I think Romanian deadlifts might have been a better idea for them if they weren't doing that. Some of them were doing stiff-legged deadlifts and rounding that lower back to get down further, but because the back wasn't arched, they weren't really getting the stretch in the belly of the hamstring itself, and they weren't necessarily building those nice big and balloony hamstrings. So yeah, that was one glaring thing, was the leg development was not necessarily consistent, let's put it that way. Let's change the frame rate. All right, let's do just stop it.
I like filming you.
Now the next body part that was glaringly deficient in most of the guys I competed against, not all the guys were getting top 3, but I'm talking about the guys that were outside of that, okay, was the back development was weak, where they were getting a little bit of lats, but they weren't getting any trap development. They weren't necessarily getting that real width, because a lot of times they were training their back by using too much of the arm. So a lot of times people make fun of me because the way I train back, because I'm pulling all with the lats. I'm not trying to bring in the arms so much when I'm doing my back. So what happens is that my back hits failure, not my arms, right? So I noticed this early on when I started training, was that when I was doing chin-ups and I was trying to come up over the bar all the time, I was getting a great bicep pump and sometimes a shoulder pump, but I wasn't getting a back pump, and my back was not necessarily getting that mind-muscle connection happening. So I started to change my technique, started to lean back in the bar, stick that chest out, and that created the back that you know today, which is just like famous, right? It's like, I mean, at least a few hundred people know about it. So that's one thing I noticed, is that the back development was usually lacking. Although there were some great arms and some great shoulders, the back development was lacking. Now, that said, the next body part that was lacking was the rear delts. A lot of times the rear delts were not necessarily developed because they weren't doing the external rotation type of movements. They weren't doing the bent over laterals properly. They weren't necessarily concentrating more on rear delts and side delts. Instead, they were concentrating too much on the front side of things. So they'd be getting that rounded sort of look, right? So a lot of these guys were not necessarily working on the most important parts, which is the back and the legs, and then allowing the other body parts to come into play. What I mean by that is that your legs and your back training stimulates the entire endocrine system. So that way, when you are training chest or training arms, you're going to get more development in those areas because your body is a system and you have to stimulate the whole system in order to get all of it to grow. So those are the three major body parts I noticed were weak. Now, I'm not saying that there wasn't any calf weaknesses out there because yeah, genetically some guys don't have calves and all that kind of stuff. But I would say the things that they could really do something about was changing their back training, concentrating on squatting through the hips or doing low bar squats instead of high bar squats if they're just getting medialis development, or maybe changing the type of movements they're doing, maybe doing one-legged movements like one-legged squats or lunges, or doing the Romanian deadlifts differently in order to get that belly of the hamstring. So there were a few things that I felt that they could do differently because some of these guys I train with, some of these guys I'd see at the gym and I'd watch them train too. And then the guys that were training properly for their body type, they were having hamstring development. They were getting those V-like backs and things happening, right? So it does boil down to partially training for your constitution and your body type, but at the same time, the glaring weak link in most of the guys on stage was hamstring, glute development, and back. I never talked about glutes too much, but glutes do tie into how you squat and they do tie into the hamstring development because if you're training legs and you're pushing with your posterior chain and you're concentrating on the hip extension, you're going to be hitting hamstring and you're going to be hitting some glute in there. And at the same time, the quadricep that you're going to be mainly focusing on is mostly the lateralis, mostly that sweep part of the quadricep. So that's why I think even though I didn't do full squats or parallel squats, I got leg development that was destroying the competition along with hamstrings and butt is because I was squatting not only for my body type, because my body type is going to be different than other guys, but what I noticed was that I was concentrating on the hip part of the squat, kind of like a power lifter, even though my range of motion was less, and I was getting the development in the muscles that were necessary to contribute the most amount of mass to my legs possible. So yeah, hopefully this gives you a kind of perspective of what to watch out for if you're thinking about competing. Maybe you're concentrating all on arms and stuff all the time, but I'll tell you right now, back and legs and chest, you know, those three things are the most important things to focus on. And then from there, you work on the pretty little arm parts and stuff like that. Mountain. I mean, you could work on them anyway, but you know what I'm saying? I mean, the most important thing is to get that symmetrical hourglass type figure. Is it hourglass? You don't want an hourglass figure, but you know what I mean? But the most important thing is to get that V type taper, you know, and then the reverse V down the bottom. You want those legs to kind of come out, you know what I'm saying? So yeah, small waist, big back, and big legs. There you go. I hope that simplifies it. Mountain. So thanks a lot for watching. If you need to get hold of me, just go to naturalgallantbodybuilding.com, and thanks to the Patreon supporters, and take care for now. And share my stuff. Share it. Otherwise I'll come to your house. Actually, you know, let me find out where you live. I'm gonna find out where you live. I'll find out where you live. I'm coming. I'm coming to your house right now. I'm coming to your house right now. I'll kick your fucking ass. I'm gonna kick some ass. Hey? Yeah? Well, I'm coming. I'll be there in a minute. All right, it's gonna be quicker to drive. I think it'd be quicker to drive. Mountain.